Welcome to the Fully Engaged Fitness Podcast, where you'll be hearing from the top fitness experts from the engaged personal training community of businesses. These include client interviews and success stories, insights and tips from our top fitness experts, and the unique approach that we bring to our clients that have helped transform thousands of lives over the last 10 years in business. Don't forget to like and subscribe this podcast so that you can be the first one in the know. Now let's get into this episode.
What's going on, folks? This is Coach Nick coming to you from Gage Strength Training in our OG location in Westchester, PA. Guys, today I wanted to talk with you about recovery. All right, so recovery is a kind of a catch-all hot button word that we hear a lot about these days, especially when it comes to fitness and our overall health. So let's try and dig in and get a little clarity here. All right, I mean, there's a lot to do with recovery, talking about our different workouts, talking about, what we're doing before, after workout, even kind of just figuring out recovery in between sets for your strength training. So we're going to kind of dial it in a little bit and try to keep it focused in on strength training, recovery related to our workouts, and kind of cover a couple of things just to give you some clarity on what we mean when we talk about recovery as it relates to fitness and our overall wellness, right? So obviously there's things that you can do outside of the gym that are really obvious when it comes to recovery, right? Everybody's going to think, oh man, like a spa day, that would be awesome. That's a great recovery. And it is, right? Like that's a great way to kind of down-regulate the system. Nothing against that. There's recovery centers like Restore Hyper Wellness that we deal with at some of our locations out there in Greenville and here in Westchester, which are also awesome tools, and we'll touch on that briefly, right? But it all kind of starts with how we're approaching our workouts and kind of the way that we treat our body during the workout, after the workout, and we're going to start with just the kind of basic form right at the bat is what we do in the gym. And we're going to start with recovery during our sets. All right. So I know for me at our main location in Gage, there's been times where, you'll kind of have that question to yourself of, am I resting too long in between my exercises? Should I be resting more in between my exercises? And really, how to approach that depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve, right? So everybody's going to be a little bit different when we kind of look at the way that they're going to approach their workouts and kind of the expectations for that. So when we look at recovery, there's a couple tools as coaches that we use that you may have heard. You've heard coaches talk about HRV, which is a really big thing now with fitness trackers. You see Fitbit, things like Morpheus. There's the Oura Rings. There's the Whoop bands. Those tools are fantastic. If you're able to use one and you have access to it, it's a really good tool to have some actual data as to what the body is feeling. So that's one of those things that is a good tool for us to use, but it's not totally necessary, right? There's other things that we can use. I mean, there's more technical things like your VO2 max, which you might hear when it comes to kind of training our higher end athletes and kind of Olympic athletes, different things like that, or even just at certain performance centers. We can kind of test VO2 max. But one of the things that really is kind of the most common and most approachable thought to managing kind of the way we approach our workouts is two things. One is the idea of your rate of perceived exertion, which is how much energy are you putting into your workouts? How do you feel, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, holy crap, I can barely get through this, and 9 being, this is really hard, I could do a little bit more. We want to live in that 7 to 8 range where this is tough, but I can do it, right? So that's one way just to think about how hard we're getting into it. And then, as I mentioned, is the talk test, right? This is the idea of when I'm physically working out, can I hold a conversation? Would it be difficult for me to hold a conversation, or am I too tired to even speak, right? And then there's kind of levels within that, right? So depending on what our approach is, whether we're doing strength training and even broken down within that strength training, kind of what we're trying to elicit within the exercise, that can kind of dictate how much rest time we need, right? So guys, there's a whole rabbit hole of kind of bioenergetics that we can get down into. Each type of movement kind of uses a different energy system. And each one of those energy systems requires a different amount of time in order for it to kind of recover, right? And you may notice that when we do certain really, really heavy exercises, right? If you do, say, a really heavy set for 5, if you were to wait 30 seconds and trying to do that really heavy set again, it would be tough. And oftentimes, when we're doing those heavy sets, I've had clients kind of come up to me and go, man, why was that second set almost impossible? Like the first set really felt really, really easy. I could barely do the bench on the second set. And one of my first questions would be is, well, how long did you rest, right? So if you consider kind of the different ways that we're approaching strength training, depending on what your intentions are, is going to kind of dictate how long of a rest time you need during that workout, right? So when we're really in that higher end range of I am really pushing here, I'm really trying to reach a 1 rep max, or I'm trying to do a 3 to 5 rep max, oftentimes that is going to require a little bit longer of a rest time if we want to continue to try and elicit that same goal of that higher end strength, right? So I have had clients who are trying to hit a 3 rep max or a 5 rep max where I've looked at them, I've given them a stopwatch, and I said, I want you to wait at least 2 full minutes, right? Now, in an hour-long session, sometimes 2 minutes feels like an eternity, okay? So again, we want to make sure that we're looking at what is the goal of my training for the day, what is the goal for the exercise, okay? When we look at muscle building, and we look into that hypertrophy range, you'll notice that sometimes you'll see people, you do supersets. Say you do a set of dumbbell curls and then you grab a band and you might do 20 or 30 band curls and just kind of let the muscle gas out. Other times we will have you kind of bounce back and forth between exercises in that higher rep range, that kind of 8, 12, 15 rep range, and limit our rest time a little bit, right? So if I'm really trying to build muscle, I might limit my rest time a little bit more, because I'm really trying to really wipe that muscle out and allow it to kind of build back up and generate that muscle growth, right? So again, we're looking at higher end exercise, really strong, heavy deadlifts, heavy bench, heavy squats. Sometimes you might need a little bit more rest time, upwards of 2 minutes before you're able to go back and repeat that exercise. Now, what we often do with our full body training style and that functional approach is we'll pair that exercise with another exercise where the muscles don't necessarily compete for that same energy, right? Again, we're looking at an hour-long training session, so we want to make sure that we get efficiency there, right? We can use those non-competing muscle groups so that by the time you get back to that bench or that heavy squat, you can really kind of go for the full amount of potential that you have there, right? So then we look to hypertrophy. We're trying to bring it down a little bit, guys, and then you're looking at another approach is kind of like that endurance range, right? Of where we're trying to keep that heart rate a little bit higher, thinking a little bit more of like a high intensity class, where we tend to be moving a lot. We're really limiting that rest time. Oftentimes it's 30 seconds or less, right? And a lot of those classes or in those sessions, or in that kind of training approach, we limit the rest time while we're doing the workouts. We're limiting the weight. So overall volume might shift, right? When we think of volume of exercise, it's how many reps am I doing? How much weight am I doing? And how many sets? So if we're doing it for time, right, one of the variables that we might bring down is that weight so that we allow ourselves to get adequate rest, let the muscles build back up. So during a workout, depending on what we're doing, it can kind of change, right? Which is why we limit rest time in certain workouts, and in other sections, we really try to allow ourselves to get full rest. Okay, so during the workout, making sure that you're staying hydrated, like that kind of stuff almost seems apparent, right? There's stuff that we can do before the workout, making sure that we're staying properly hydrated heading up into the workout, which will also allow us to enhance that recovery. Right. Sometimes people like to use amino acids or something like that, which make them feel as though they have a little bit more energy in the workout. But as per most things, water is going to be your kind of number one energy source there of making sure you're feeling good during those workouts. Right. So we've talked about in the workout. Now we look at a little bit of kind of after the workout, post recovery. one of the things that I hear all the time, the questions is, what should I do after a workout? And how can I allow myself to recover quicker? So first things first, do a cool down. All right. Do some sort of cool down. Pick your 2 or 3 favorite exercises that, feel the best, whether it could be a cat-cow, something for your low back, child's pose, pigeon pose, something that we're focusing on our breathing. We're allowing our blood flow to kind of cool back down, and we're really allowing our body to adapt to the stress that we just put it under, right? So the idea of recovery after the workout is similar to the idea of recovery overall, right? Ultimately, our training is only going to rise to the level of our recovery. That's something I stole from another coach that I know very well, or that I've learned from. And the idea is that the harder you train, the harder you're going to have to recover. All right. So after a workout, if you've done a really heavy, high intensity session, you want to make sure that you spend some time recovering, letting your body recover. Make sure that you're having plenty of water. All right. We look at overall water consumption. If you've never heard the amount that we're really looking at, guys, minimum of 100 ounces a day is a really good start. We say you can go 50% of your body weight in ounces. And then for every hour of exercise after that, realistically, you could add another 16 to 20 ounces on, which seems like a lot of water. I know it seems like a lot of water, but find different ways to get it in, whether you have to get yourself a Hydro Flask or one of those things that you carry around with you. Set a water alarm. Guys, your hydration consumption is going to be huge in terms of your progress and your recovery, especially post-workout, making sure that you get hydrated. And even looking, if you're drinking a bunch of that water, guys, getting something like an electrolyte. Like we have, the Engage Labs, we have a nice good electrolyte there at the gym. There's other things like liquid IVs and Element T, which are awesome. And if you sweat a lot, definitely making sure you get some electrolytes in is going to be paramount to your success in terms of our body being able to build muscle and adapt the way that we want to. So as we look at that recovery post-workout, right, get a cool down in, hydrate, get your electrolytes in. Okay. Now, Coach Brandon here at the Westchester gym is going to hate me for this, but there's been some recent studies. One of the things we were told, and we get told a lot, is make sure you have protein within 20 to 30 minutes after your workout. Guys, it's still a good rule of thumb as we are really trying to increase that protein uptake. A lot of times after a workout, we're fairly hungry. So for most people, getting enough protein is something that we are aspiring to do. So having a protein shake post-workout is awesome. However, if you cannot have a protein shake within 20 or 30 minutes, it is not the end of the world. Your body is still going to synthesize and uptake that protein as long as you're able to reach the recommendations throughout the day. And we usually say as a recommendation, 1 gram per pound of lean body mass, right? If you're not sure where you're at, guys, start at 100 grams of protein, 100 to 150 grams of protein. That is, again, keeping those protein stores high after workouts and with heavy resistance training is one of the most important things to longevity, right? As well as weight loss overall. Being able to kind of keep that high protein diet keeps us full a little bit longer, okay? And it's going to allow those muscles to continue to build and repair, right? So that we can then allow those muscles to burn that fat energy as we're in that caloric deficit, all right? So post-recovery, we're focusing our water. We're making sure that we keep protein high throughout the day, right? Now, okay, so we figured out, we've talked about a little bit the rest time in between workouts, how to recover post-workout with our strength routine, mobility routine. Another thing that we hear a lot about or we try to touch on is the idea of a recovery day, right? If your routine is, say, 3 to 5 days a week, which we usually recommend, 4 days is awesome, 5 days is great. Usually what I would have people do, if I could prescribe everybody the perfect workout kind of schedule, it would be 3 days of strength training, 2 days of kind of some sort of aerobic training or some sort of HIIT training, even 1 day aerobic, 1 day HIIT, and then a day of just fun and movement and mobility, and then 1 day of complete rest. Okay. So The term active rest is something that we hear a lot, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that we can approach this concept of active rest, all right? We're thinking a nice light walk. You could do a nice kind of low intensity yoga session. We hear a lot about the term mobility, right? Maybe just finding 3 to 5 or 8 to 10 different movement patterns that really feel good for the body, right? We're trying to use this active recovery is basically a way of keeping the blood flowing, keeping the body moving, right? Controlling our breathing, controlling our body to allow it to repair from some of the other damage that it's incurred, right? As we strength train, there's damage that's going to be occurred to the body, all right? So as we break that down, we need to allow our body the time, the nutrients, right? And the blood flow to continue to bring those recovery pieces and recovery elements to all the tissue that we've then broken down, right? So we talked about water, we talked about all that. Well, all that gets brought all to our muscles and throughout the body through blood flow, right? So when we're really tired and we're sore and we feel like, man, I don't know that I want to do anything, the best thing you can do is go for a short walk, right? Even if it's 15 or 20 minutes, or even just saying, I'm going to go for a walk is really, really good active recovery. All right. Strength training can be active recovery too. Okay. You can just find some lighter weights or some exercises that our focus is really more on range of motion, quality movement, right? And breathing. Okay. So as we stimulate our body and we're really kind of kicking it up, we're working that nervous system and working that fight or flight. So there's only a certain amount of bandwidth that we can kind of kick it to, depending on our experience, our age, and again, what our goals are. That may vary in terms of what our output looks like. And because of that, that's going to then dictate a little bit of what our recovery looks like, right? So maybe needing 2 days of recovery as we get a little bit older, or if we have a really heavy, hectic schedule, high stress, lots of stress at home or work stress, right? It's nice and idyllic to say, all right, cool, like let's work out 5 days a week. Like it would be awesome if everybody could drop what they were doing, work out 5 or 6 days a week, and just be the pinnacle of health. But that's hard, right? And that's the truth about it. So everybody's recovery might look a little bit different, but what we do on those days can be similar, right? During that kind of active recovery, I personally like to go for walks. I like to do some small hikes, right? For me, getting out in nature is one of the things that really kind of brings down my nervous system. I'll turn my phone off, even kind of turn it on airplane mode, because I know for half an hour, I think I'm fine. I'm not needed. Again, I know that's tough for some people, but trying to even use that active recovery as an opportunity to allow the nervous system to calm down while increasing the blood flow, right? Another option is to work through certain movement patterns that have been challenging you, right? Finding somebody to help you work through those movement patterns and using that as a recovery day is always a really, really good option as well, right? Then we have the concept of this idea of a passive day off. Honestly, this should be a day of total rest. Again, when you have children, I know for a lot of you guys, a total day of rest is very, very difficult. But the question I usually like to ask people is, how do you fill your cup, right? As parents, you tend to be a colander of water just flowing through to everybody else. So on a passive day, if you have the opportunity, whether it be 20, 30 minutes, an hour, or if you're lucky enough to have a full day, do something that fills your cup, something that you love. Guys, if this is active recovery for you, a little bit more of like a walk, that's fine too, right? But we just want to make sure that we're finding that balance to give the body enough time to recover from the stresses that we impose on ourselves on a daily basis, right? So, we talked about a few different approaches to recovery during sets. There's the other process, guys, of how do I do this? How do I bring it down, right? So in future podcasts and conversations, we'll dig a little bit deeper into how we use our breath and how we can dig a little bit deeper into different either meditation or breathing practices, as well as some of Coach Jeff's favorite, biohacking tactics to continue to downregulate that nervous system and allow us to control the hormone function that our body inevitably goes through, right? So last couple of things that we're going to wrap up here with, guys, is just top tips, most important things when it comes to recovery, all right? So first and foremost, guys, it all comes down to our sleep regimen, all right? I know this is easier said than done for some people, but sleep is your number one recovery tool. I can't emphasize that enough. Bringing the temperature down in the room, allowing it to be dark, and really trying to get 8 hours is going to be one of the most, and if not the most effective recovery tool for us to kind of combat all the stresses that we're putting ourselves through, right? Making sure we have proper hydration. We touched on it earlier. Getting that minimum 100 ounces a day, right? Getting those, 10 8-ounce glasses a day minimum to allow ourselves to hit that proper level of recovery. Right? That's our water. When we look at another one, guys, number 3, protein. All right, really trying to hit that protein goal, finding out what it is for you, okay? If we don't know, starting at 100 grams, 100 to 150 grams of protein a day. Talk to your coaches about how to help you get there if we're not sure, all right? Get those protein shakes in and make sure we're using that to allow ourselves to recover. And lastly, guys, making sure that we're utilizing our recovery days, doing some active recovery, okay? Getting out for a walk, getting some sunshine and some fresh air, okay? Utilizing that passive, that complete day off, which I know is hard, right? But even though if we can get even 20 to 30 minutes to allow ourselves to focus on some deep breathing, get outside, get some sunshine when available, right? Utilizing this recovery practice is going to allow us to really kind of reach new heights with our training, with our productivity, and really just improving our overall day function and our level of happiness. So, guys, we'll dig a little bit more into this stuff as we talk about tactics and habit building through sleep and mobility and different nutrition tips as well. But thank you guys for listening. I hope this was really beneficial for you. And I look forward to speaking with you guys again soon. Have a great day.